All right. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to switch gears, and it's my pleasure to welcome our third-time PHIST speaker, Maggie Lee, now with United Nations Environmental Program. And this masterclass is going to focus on SEA Circular. Is that Southeast Asia Circular, or is there another SEA Circular? UNEP.
That's right.
Very good.
You got it.
Very good. Now, the first session, we really wanted to dive into the technical knowledge on sustainable hotels, building aspects, design. The big topic we have heard a lot about as one of the solutions to plastic is the circular economy. And we know there's a lot of initiatives, a lot of things out there, but what does that actually mean? And what are some of the initiatives in practice to really have this become a viable solution? So what are the best practices? How does it apply to Southeast Asia? So in this session, Maggie will enlighten us on the initiatives that UNEP is doing in circular economy. So Maggie, please take it away.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. And like Eric said, I am a third-time speaker at PHIST, and so I really feel that PHIST is almost like going home now. The past two times we met in Phuket in person, and this time around we have a very brand new platform, and I'm very happy to actually be a part of this once again. And so in the last 2 years, I've actually spoken quite a lot about food waste and also about plastic reduction in hotels. This time around, it's no different, but it's just a lot more refined and sophisticated. I'll share my PowerPoint presentation with you. And meanwhile, let me just give you a little bit of an update on where I am right now. So the past two times I was speaking on behalf of WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, from Singapore. This time around, I'm now based in Bangkok. I'm now working for UNEP, which is the United Nations Environment Program. And usually we say UNEP and not UNEP, because there's another one called United Nations Development Program, and they're called UNDP. So I think you are able to see my screen right now. Let me just double check if it's showing up on stage. Is it showing up on stage at all? Okay, let me just try that again. Okay. Here we go. Please let me know if you can't see my screen. Wonderful.
We can see it.
Thank you so much. So as Eric mentioned, C Circular, the SEA are capitalized. It is actually really a double entendre on Southeast Asia. And that's also where I am working at right now from the UNEP Bangkok office. Specifically, we do have 6 target countries in mind, inclusive of Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and that's it, 6 countries. So these 6 countries fall into one mechanism called COBC. It's actually the coordinating bodies on the seas of East Asia. It's one of those intergovernmental mechanisms where countries send their representatives from their ministries of environment and also coastal resources to talk about the marine ecosystems. So overfishing or depleting coral reefs, and also, of course, marine litter fall into that category. And so this project is actually a very interesting one because it just started not long ago, and we're now in our adolescence, I would say. Our project is now trying to work very, very closely with guys like you. So got people who are now interested or already in hospitality industry. So with regards to marine litter, we know that it is a very big problem. I don't need to say any more about this because the past 3 years, I think awareness on plastics and marine litter has skyrocketed. We all know to skip the straw. That's actually something that goes without saying. We're now having a double take on plastic packaging, especially the ones that are filled with things that we are able to actually get elsewhere, for example, like water. So we know that there's a lot of challenges dealing with skipping or reducing plastic, especially now with COVID-19. We really can't have any master classes without mentioning COVID-19, can we? It is really, in fact, impacting our livelihoods a lot because of how we are much more prone to being infected if we're not careful. And there would be a lot more disposable plastics involved. Our masks, our single-use plastics, the wrappings on everything. Now that when you go bread somewhere in a bakery, they don't actually just showcase their bread in a container anymore. It's all wrapped up singly, individually. And so we know that plastic is a threat to the marine ecosystems, and not just the marine ecosystems. The marine ones are actually much more pronounced. Even on landscapes, they are actually a very serious pollutant. And there are a few reasons. First of all, they cause climate change. Secondly, we know that marine animals are under threat. I think we lost count of how many times we've seen a video of a poor marine animal getting trapped or getting stuck in plastics. And also, we know that there's many plastics that are getting ingested, not just by animals now, by ourselves even. We know that these types of packaging and also different types of uses of plastic eventually end up in our food and in our water. So these unintended consequences, I've mentioned in the first PHIST, saying that, is it enough to vilify plastics because of these unintended consequences? My answer is still no. Okay, for 3 years in a row, I'm still saying that I'm defending the use of plastics, but only in a proper way. We know that there are many ways to use plastics very brilliantly. For example, in our laptops, in our glasses, in many things that last, but not so much in things that do not last. We know that plastics is from a non-renewable resource, meaning that they are from mostly from fossil fuels at this point. More than 99% are still from fossil fuels. These are materials that are accumulated over millions of years for us to have, and we're now depleting them at a very quick rate. Second thing is climate change. I mentioned that the production of plastics does involve climate change, and it is actually one of the precursors of it. And thirdly is the interference with nature, not just with animals, but with ourselves even. When we go for a nice swim in Phuket, the last thing we want is to actually see a bunch of plastic bags or plastic bottles floating around. So enough with the consequences. What do we do with that? And so last time around, I presented the WWF Pact Agreement, which is still valid and it's still going very strong in Southeast Asia. This time around, I'd like to actually introduce to you what Sea Circular does. As I mentioned, Sea Circular is a play on words. It actually means Southeast Asia. And circular goes without saying. We are trying to thrive for a circular economy. We're trying to actually put it into a very, very clean, streamlined process for the private sector. So anyone working in hotels and tourism, we would like you to be familiar with this process that only involves 5 steps. First of all, there's the understanding step. Okay, what do you need to understand about plastics? Well, I have gone over about what's the difficulties in plastics. They're used pretty much everywhere. They're ubiquitous around us. Secondly, they do have properties that are very hard to replace. Even when we're coming up with corn plastics, bioplastics, seaweed containers, we know that there are many promising ideas out there, but we know that not one single one has all the properties that plastic offers, especially when it comes to price. And so that's why we're putting our minds together to make sure that we understand what are the concepts that are being offered by plastics. What are the trends now to replace these things or to reduce the use of plastics so that any leakages in our waste management system will not actually end up in the form of marine litter. That is the last thing we want. We do want to manage our waste better. We want to make sure that the used plastic is going back into the economy to create circularity better. And that's what we call plastic value chain management. Because when your company decides to purchase, let's say, a plastic fork or a plastic bag, it does actually burden on the local waste management system. And we know that some of that may become leakage and become plastic pollutants in the marine environments. And so that's why this understanding is very important. And we've designated a speaker from the Ocean Recovery Alliance who will be actually speaking for us. It's all paid for. It is free of charge for anyone to attend. It's this training is called Plastics Disclosure Project Training. And it includes not only the understanding first step, it also includes the next step, the measurement. Of course, if you're trying to go on diet or if you're going to pursue a healthier lifestyle, you need to know your baseline first, right? You need to know how much you weigh. So you step on the bathroom scale, you now know your weight. And so you need to actually set up a target. So the first step to anything to management is to measure it. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's also why the calculation of overall consumption, we call it plastic footprint, just like carbon footprint, is very important, a next step, so that we can understand what we're working with right now in 2020, September. We now need to know how much we're spending on plastics. We now need to look at plastics singularly instead of looking at cutlery and bags and bin liners. We're now looking at plastics as the polymers they are. The last step that the Plastic Disclosure Project training offers is actually the disclosure part. It's called Plastic Disclosure Project for a reason. And so the disclosure sounds really scary. I know, because I was there with you. I was actually working in the private sector most of my life. And when people say disclosure, that's really frightening, because we know that comes with it quite a lot of risk. And that's also why we're helping you manage that risk. We want you to be backed up by UNEP and also by our business partners and also by the Ocean Recovery Alliance to do this methodically and also to do this hopefully without any challenges. It's actually, it's just like a guy who's actually starting to work out. Is it okay to laugh at a person who's just started their workout? No, it's because it's the first step to a very long journey. It's the same thing with this disclosure. When the baseline actually has any type of transparency, be it internal for internal stakeholders or external, being in some sort of a external annual report or an annual sustainability report, we're hoping that these businesses can disclose their current plastic consumption, either by disclosing how much they're using for each type of polymer or what they're using this plastic for. We're really hoping for just a general trend right here. We're not asking for any specific figures, or it has to be at a certain publication level. So we're trying to say that we want to get people to get used to telling people about their plastic footprint. And this is the last step in the Plastic Disclosure Project. It's an ongoing step, but this is the last bit that we're offering in our free training. So what about the next two? Remember I said 5 steps? Next step will be the commitment, okay? As usual, once you started off your healthy diet and your healthy pursuit for a healthy life, you have to actually commit to a specific goal. I am going to lose this many kilograms or pounds. I am going to stop consuming food that is not good for me, for example. These are commitments, and we want this type of commitments for plastics as well. We know that Phuket Hotels Association has already made their commitment, and we're very happy to announce that in March of this year, Phuket Hotels Association has now signed up as one of the supporting organizations of the commitment scheme that I will tell you about next. So we're very proud of them because PHA is the first, not one of the, but the first in Southeast Asia to sign up for this. Commitments can look like different things. It could look like I will reduce my plastic consumption by 50% regardless of polymer. I can actually substitute other alternative materials for the virgin fossil fuel-based plastic. I can switch to a biodegradable plastic that is made of corn. So many types of these actions fall into this commitment category. And so you may ask, so what on earth should I do for a hotel my size or for an establishment that is branded by different names and has different types of standards that we have to adhere to? So in comes this this plastic reduction commitment framework. It's called One Planet, or in long we call it the One Planet Travel with Care. So this is actually an initiative that's set up by the United Nations World Travel Organization, WTO, and also ourselves, UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. Along with Ellen MacArthur Foundation, they are a global NGO that is taking the lead on plastic reduction and also making sure that our oceans are safe from plastic pollution. And not just them. As you see in this slide, there are so many more recognizable brands, especially in the hotel and hospitality industry, that are backing this this commitment framework. They're one of the people who founded these things, and they're now on the advisory committee, as with Sea Circular. So you may recognize that many of these are European brand names and big shots in the hotel industry. Some of them are very well known here in Thailand, especially Pata and also WWF. We know GSTC as well, and also Mekong Tourism. These are very local from Southeast Asia. So we do have a very healthy mix representing a few important geographies. And you see that we do have hotel chains, regardless of brand, that have signed up for this type of advisory role in this committee. So what on earth is this now? So what are you trying to get us to do, Maggie? Well, we are trying to endorse this initiative. First of all, making sure that you understand that this is actually a top-notch commitment framework for you to look into your plastic footprint management. Just like what I mentioned, you need to set a goal for yourself so that you know how many kilograms do you have to shave off by what time. Likewise, it is a time-bound commitment for a specific quantitative target for plastic reduction so that we go more towards circular economy. What we're not saying is that you have to remove all sorts of plastic, even though when they're reusable. Okay, we know that the TVs contain plastic. You're not going to get a TV that is plastic free, for example. So that's also why we're focusing on specific parts of your plastic value chain, the ones that are most likely to cause problems as plastic pollutants. And so I'm glad to send you this plastic commitment framework, and I will not go into detail about every single action, but as you can see here, it's actually a very developed process that is attested by many hotels, especially the ones that are on the advisory committee. We meet once every 2 months to reevaluate whether or not these goals are still realistic. And especially with COVID-19 hitting the tourism industry very hard, we now have different approaches, especially for COVID-19. We know that guests are looking for something else when they're feeling that sanitary precautions need to be upped, and therefore these hotels are giving us their inputs live every 2 months. And so we are changing our perspectives on this very often so that to make sure that it's still relevant and that we're making a great effort still, regardless of how much how these challenges are coming at us. And so the commitments, of course, would look like a multi-step approach, just like what I'm showing you here. And they already have a very established best practice approach as well, which my next speaker will actually speak more in detail with you about. But rest assured that this global plastic tourism initiative, or One Planet, is very much the ones that we can endorse. UNEP will give you that endorsement once you achieve as a signing committee member or a signing member of this, just like Phuket Hotels Association has. And so this is a very long journey. And of course, we're not going to lie, it's not going to happen overnight, just like weight loss and also eating healthy. It's going to be a very gradual process. And eventually when you get there, it's going to be easier than when you started. And we know that it's going to be a habit that needs to be ingrained inside all these organizations that are participating, including their staff, their regular operations, their procurement. And that's also why we believe that we should group you with people who are already well on their way in this journey, such as the ones that I've shown before. They have been experimenting with this framework for a very long time, and I trust that they are able to provide many more pre-competitive sharing and also lessons of best practices with you. So just to list a few, we have these guys here, and of course we have Phuket Hotels Association as one of the supporting organizations, and they're listed as a destination because they are inclusive of the entire Phuket. So the last step of the 4 steps is the collaboration of our commitment towards plastic reduction. We know that plastic reduction requires a lot more help other than just your team and in your hotels. We know that there's procurement, there's raw material sourcing, there is a lot of testing with consumers. There may be even focus groups required to make sure that you know which best alternative to resort to. So collaboration is a key step in our program for Sea Circular, and it is solely funded by the Swedish government. What they really like is the next thing that I'd like to tell you, is this big event that we held last year and we're about to hold this year as well. It's called the Sea of Solutions, SOS for short. The pictures I'm showing you right now is actually live from Sea of Solutions 2019. It was held here in Bangkok, where I am right now, and it was a week-long event. and it was fully in person last year. But of course, this year, we know that something's got to be changed, right? Especially here with PHIST, we now have this brand new, cool platform that we can use. So this year around, Sea of Solutions invites all of you to register with us as a member of the hospitality industry, or as a member who's just interested in sustainability in Southeast Asia in general. This event, we expect to be mostly virtual, but it's not going to be any smaller than last year. Last year, we invited 600 delegates from all over Southeast Asia and beyond. We had high-level diplomats, ministers, ambassadors, and also thought leaders. We had the young ambassadors for UNEP to join us. And so it's not an event particularly for anybody, but it's for everybody. We want the conversations about solutions for marine litter to be live, to be on, still on, despite now that we have COVID-19 that inhibits international travel. This year, we're co-hosting it with the government of Vietnam, and we're now looking at how has the needle moved. Since last year, since 3 years ago, PHIST has already spoken about marine plastics. So how much has that gone on? How much have we actually moved as an entire industry? And we want to actually provide you with the marketplace solutions as well. We want to introduce to you many solution providers that have already worked out their models, and we want to link up the two. So the last step of those 5 steps is to collaborate. And the best way forward is to talk to us or talk to anyone who's already well in their journey for plastic reduction, just like my next speaker. If you're interested in knowing more about Sea Circular, you can find us just by Googling Sea Circular. The first result will be our homepage, and also by emailing us at sea-circular@un.org. We're a full UN initiative sponsored by the Swedish government, and we're really looking forward to working with you. Thank you. Eric, I can't hear you for some reason. I think you're on mute.
That's because I was muted. Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Maggie. We have some great interest in this, and wanted to see if there's any questions from the audience in the remaining time before we turn the stage over to Dirk. And it looks like we have some interest in the framework and in doing the plastic audit as well. So if you could just, in the minutes remaining, without a question, so it's the plastic disclosure framework. Is that that's part of it? Okay.
That's part of the first 3 steps, because we know that Ocean Recovery Alliance is another NGO that has already developed this type of methodology, and our project Sea Circular has purchased the rights from them for the use of the Southeast Asian community. And so that's why we're hosting regular trainings for quite a lot of hotel members, actually, more hotel members than any other industry. And so it is actually a great time to look into your plastic footprint, especially now that we're going through some sort of a restructuring and revamping of our businesses, looking into our clientele, trying to change up our business models to actually get used to the new norm. And so thank you so much for the comments and questions, and please stay tuned to the Sea of Solutions. And if you don't actually, if you have interest in attending Sea of Solutions this year, and I invite Eric and everyone who's actually on the chat right now, and also of course Dirk, to join us, because we do have specific talks about the hospitality industry. We do want this to be a very relevant event for all of us.
Very good. And speaking of that, is it going to be virtual and in person? Is it possible to attend virtually the Sea of Solutions in November?
Great question. We're planning on having some sort of a hybrid event. So for those of us who are actually in Bangkok or allowed to travel in Thailand, we are hoping to have a face-to-face kind of a smaller event in Bangkok, and then perhaps one in Vietnam and maybe one in Malaysia as well, so that we have 3 hubs kind of firing off together, but also with a virtual main event.
Okay, very good. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Maggie. Now we have a few more minutes of time left, so I'll open it. If not, let me once again, remind everybody that you can visit. And Maggie, how can we contact you if we have any further question or inquiry? How can we?
Yeah, I think I should just type that email here. ccircular.org is already the email to reach out to our entire project team. We're all based in Bangkok, with the exception of some national consultants. We're not just looking at the hotel industry, and that's also the beauty of it, because we're working with governments. Of course, that's what the UN does. And so we're trying to get the governments to actually make sure that these policies and these efforts are being rewarded. We don't want you guys to be doing all the hard work in silence. So that's why the governments, even the ministries of industries, for example, and also ministries of environment, they're recognizing what we're doing together, especially in pilot sites and also across these 6 target countries that I've named. I also see a question about how do we register for the Plastic Disclosure Project. Bingo, thank you. So please email ccircular@un.org, the one that I just typed in the chat box, so that we can register your company. It's totally free of charge, and it is a 1 day or 2 day long training, depending on how we're scheduling the segregation of companies. We just had our last one in July, I think. We're going to have another one pretty soon as well. So please come on board with us. There's no obligation to do anything. You can just join the trainings for free.
Yeah. So that's great. That's great to hear that it's a free training. We love free training and free knowledge here. We think there needs to be more. I just wanted to close with something you mentioned that I think is very interesting about how if you want to get in shape, then you need those those initial steps to sort of get in shape, right? For you, I think what you have brought to us in these past FIST is really a lot of awareness on the complexity of problems, but approaching them pragmatically and getting to the point. So my final thing would be for you, what would be the 1, 2, or 3 most important takeaways about plastic that we should always keep in mind when we go out and look for alternatives, trade-offs, and solutions in circularity?
That's a great question, Eric, and I'm glad you're asking me this at the very end, because a little before it would be too convoluted, but this is the 3rd year of FIST now, and I'm assuming many of you have been returning FISTies. And so I believe that we've talked about how many times we're vilifying plastics and avoiding plastic at every cost. Okay, we just try to avoid plastics because they're evil, right? And the answer is definitely no. We know that plastics is great for certain things, but the treatment of plastics is actually where the problem is. But what we're saying is that even though we actually can take every precaution to throw away our plastics at the right places, don't litter, don't just chuck it into the ocean, of course, there's still a problem with waste management, and it will actually leak into nature no matter how hard we try. And so while we are fixing that, that's my job. That's my job at the UNEP, to actually try to improve waste management and infrastructure. What's important for you to think about is that don't blindly just switch to glass. Don't just replace plastic with something else because you think that anything is better than plastic. It never works like that in the area of sustainability, because that's how people think when they were thinking about turning everything into plastic. Let's just dispose of everything. And that's the solution to everything. All our problems are gone because we can just throw them away. And that was back in the 60s. And so if we keep following that mindset, history's just bound to repeat itself. So that's why if you're in need of a solution, or if you're interested in knowing more about what this whole thing is about, how do we find like the best seaweed or corn-based or wheat-based solution for you, we're happy to actually be there for you. And that's what this project is about. So feel free to contact us. It's just me on the other side, so don't worry.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Maggie, and great perspective. And yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is the next. Obviously, it's